Okay, we're on here with JJ Edwards from Wofford College. JJ, how you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good. I thought when you first hopped on here, I thought we were going to get a sneak peek on your recruiting board in the background there, and you told me actually that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're not getting an insight of it, but you do get to see my bad handwriting.
Well, tell me the story about how you kind of want to keep that stuff secret. For a lot of people out there, they don't realize that actually that's kind of top secret information.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit before we jumped on the interview how our AD is big on don't putting your recruits up on the board because the story goes that a lower level football team was giving a higher level football team an insight to their offense. So they were on campus and they walked into the offensive room and saw all the recruits and ended up pulling their top recruit on their board off of it. And they never heard of the guy, but they saw his name on the board, looked him up, found him, got on the phone, and then pulled him away from the smaller school before he committed or anything like that. So our AD hammers home that story. So we just do not do it. Everything is, I guess, hidden in your compliance database and all that stuff.
I feel like you guys are like the good fellows, talking in cars and writing notes on paper, nothing electronically. So if you don't mind, give the viewers kind of a background as far as your coaching background, if you don't mind.
So I am originally from upstate New York, a little town right outside of Binghamton called Endwell. Played there, went on to Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. Was fortunate or not fortunate enough I got hurt one year, so I ended up getting my undergrad and my master's while playing all 5 years and take a little of the tuition away from my fifth year while getting my master's. As soon as that was done, I had a really awesome experience, great career there. Coached one summer of summer baseball in the Perfect Game League up in upstate New York. Coached one of our players at Wofford, told me that they had a volunteer position open. Applied for it, got it, packed up my Altima, drove down to South Carolina, and then since then, I was our volunteer 1 year. I was just our hitting coach for 4, and then I am starting my 5th as recruiting coordinator and hitting coach. So they have yet to get rid of me at Wofford College.
Very cool. Well, the first question I want to ask you is, since the duties are kind of divided up between hitting and recruiting, which one do you enjoy more? Which one do you have more of a passion for?
I would say passion is probably for recruiting. I think everybody on our staff would say that. Not that I do not enjoy being our hitting coach here, which I do love. I just feel like I was always the kid playing NCAA football and all those games growing up that wanted to go to the recruiting off season and be all a part of that more than the actual games on the Saturday or whenever you're playing your video game. So my passion is developing relationships and recruiting. And then 1B would probably be my hitting coach responsibilities.
Next question I have, which I thought was interesting, was you guys are located in South Carolina. I find it very interesting. You guys only have one player from your home state. How does that happen?
It's a long process how we get there. First thing is none of our coaches are actually from the state of South Carolina. We all call South Carolina now our home. So when I first got here, we didn't really have many guys, didn't have a lot of ties to South Carolina. And then we are a very niche-y school in the state of South Carolina with high academics and a private school with a nice tuition price tag on it. So when we first tried to get our program going, our whole idea was we got to go find a spot to go get as many good players as we possibly can. And we felt like in the state of South Carolina, we were not pulling the players that we need to flip this program around. So we ended up going elsewhere, going outside the state to find academic kids that fit us. And then we are slowly, so we were talking a little bit before, we are slowly getting back in the state. Next year we have 3 kids from the state of South Carolina coming in, but this year we only actually had 1 from the state. So we had to go outside to get the talent. Now we feel like we're doing a better job. Winning more games makes it a lot easier to start recruiting in state.
How does out-of-state recruiting work? Obviously, you got a lot of guys from Georgia, which is closer to you guys as well. But I also noticed in the map, you got guys from a wide variety of states. How does an out-of-state recruit get to your place, or how do you go about getting one? Is it going through video? Do they come to your camp? Do you rely on contacts? How does that whole process work?
Combination of everything. I feel like we do a good job of not trying to fall in love with one area. And the number one thing you have to do is have the grades for us. So that kind of puts us in the direction we need to need to go anyway. But we'll do camps on the West Coast, camps in the Northeast, tournaments in the Midwest, and we're kind of everywhere. And the whole thing is, you just try to find the kids that fit you athletically, but at the same time can fit you academically, so that just your amount of kids that fit that are just not that many. So you have to go far and wide to get them.
When you attend something like an event in one different parts of the country, do you have a list of guys going in you want to go watch, or do you kind of sit down, kind of see where the talent is, and follow from the guys you like? Which one happens more often?
If it is a camp, I would say we do not have much on them before they walk into the camp, like a show ball, head first, anything along those lines. It is more you're evaluating and making contacts at the same time. If it's a tournament, we will have, I'd say 75% of the people we are going to watch, we have had contact with, been in contact with their coaches, have their name on a list of some sort. So it just depends on if we are going to a camp setting or we're going to a tournament setting, which one which they would fall under.
That's good. That's good information, because our players are always trying to contact coaches ahead of events that actually will help them.
Yep.
When you identify a player that you like, how many guys do you call for background on that player, and which guys do you call?
So I would say we're at a minimum of 2 references outside of them and their family. We will talk to the travel coach, and then we will talk to the high school coach. And if something does not line up, we will start calling more. But I would say the minimum is 2, and then we'll continue to go until we feel like we at least have the narrative on that young man.
Do you feel like overall there's a difference between what the travel coach says and the high school coach says? Does one lean towards a certain way of describing a player?
Yeah. Just to be blunt, yes. The way I see it is, the travel coach might know them well, but I feel like the travel coach only sees them when they are at their number 1%, top 5% of doing what they enjoy the most. So I do respect their opinion because they are around them playing baseball, but I feel like the high school coach, in my opinion, just has more, hey, how's he doing in classes? Where the travel coach will just have more of this is GPA, this is SAT. They might know a little bit more, but I feel like the high school coach gets the more day in and day out vibe from them.
So talking about academics and the day in, day out stuff, obviously you guys have some good requirements, to play your institution. Yeah. What are the requirements? And the second part is there any give on those? I mean, I think sometimes people think, it'll be around a certain area, or is there a threshold like, you know what, under this, we can't do anything for you, and that's kind of is what it is?
Great question. Our academic requirements for Wofford College, you're thinking about a 27 ACT, a low to mid 1200 SAT. GPA is going to go back and forth on what kind of classes you're taking, honors, AP, IB. If you're doing those classes, your GPA can be lower. If you're taking kind of the run-of-the-mill high school classes, your GPA needs to be higher. As for what you can get into Wofford College, I would be lying if I said we couldn't get in lower than that. I would also be lying if we got you in lower than that if I wouldn't be worried about you daily at our school. So it is, yes, we can get somebody in a little bit lower than that, but our whole thing is they need to value education. They need to make that a priority to their parents, to them, because we've had academic All-Americans here that were lower than that. And their whole thing was, yeah, coach, like I maxed out my ACT at a 25, but I'm going to max out every single day in the classroom. Those guys are fine here. If you're showing you can work, you'll be fine at Wofford. If it is I showed up, I had a 30 on the ACT, but I don't really work hard for it, those guys struggle.
Good. Well, a lot of if you were advising, a high school athlete, a lot of the parents and players wonder if they should take the honors course, the harder course, knowing it may ding their GPA, or should they go take, the lesser course and possibly do better in that class? How would you advise an athlete like that?
That's a phenomenal question. Talking to somebody who's never taken an honor or an AP course, I need to be extremely honest in this situation. It's just if you're going to take an honors or an AP and struggle to get a low 80s, I would say take a regular course. If you're going to take an honors AP or an IB and you're going to be floating around a high 80s or low 90s, go on and take it. It's just a balance of what is challenging you and what is too challenging, and then going back and forth. So whatever you're going to be most successful in, going forward with that. And the rule of thumb that I always tell our guys is whatever you get, if you're taking an AP, our school just bumps it up one letter grade when you're going through it. So if you can get an 80 in an AP course, it would become a 90 when Wofford looks at it.
Good, good. You know, a lot of Division I baseball programs, the guys that play Division I, a lot of them have pro baseball aspirations. And so what you'll see at some programs is after junior year, guys are drafted or doing what they can to be in pro ball. Do a lot of your guys stay all 4 years? I mean, do you get a lot of seniors that play? And then the seniors that play there, what's kind of a transition out of Wofford into the real world?
So I've been here. This is going to start my 10th. We've had a lot of draft picks. I think we've had 12 to 13 draft picks since I've been here. We've only actually had one go as a junior since I've been here. So we get a lot of fourth-year signs, drafted, free agency, go to independent ball kind of guys out of Wofford. Personally, my take on it at Wofford is the pro guys look at it and they say if they're not going to be a top 10 rounder, they're not going to leave because of the academic side to it. Like they're just not going to run and get into pro ball and without a legitimate shot at it. So that's just kind of my vibe, man. I don't know if I've necessarily had breakdown conversations with scouts about it, but that's just kind of my sense. We've had a lot of good players coming in and out of Wofford, and I feel like if they're top 10 rounders, we kind of tell them the same thing. Hey, if you're a top 10 rounder, go after your junior year. Like, that's really good money. But if you're outside of that, like, come get your degree. You can continue to develop while you're here and then give yourself a really good crack at the pro ball life.
Next question would be, you know, the cost of Wofford from tuition and board. You talk about an all-in sticker price of $60,000, and when I hear that, I think I should double or triple my kids' college fund in there for 2 years old.
Yeah.
My question to you would be, when in the process do you look if affordability is viable for the player, and then how do you ask that? And then on the opposite side, you know, how does the player and family, know if it's going to be a financial fit?
As soon as possible. I would say as soon as possible. I wouldn't say the first initial conversation I say, hey, is this an option for you? But the idea of saying $60,000 is what Wofford costs is very early on in the process, just because they want to know that just as much as you. And as soon as you say, Mike, as soon as you say, hey, it's $60,000, the follow-up question like that every single time becomes, well, do I have to pay the whole thing? Like, what are our scholarships? Like, what are those situations? Can you stack money? Is it athletic only? Like, what can you do? And then the answer we always say is, okay, nobody on our team is paying all $60,000, but at the same time, nobody on our team is paying $0 to come to Wofford. So there is kind of a range that most of our guys fall into, and then you kind of bring that up during the recruiting process, and that's when they have a conversation with your parents and get back to us, and then we'll kind of move on from there if it's a yes or no. Either way, no hard feelings. We understand that is a very private matter with your family, and we're just giving you as much information as possible to work with.
And why don't you explain stacking, for people watching, because some people don't know what it means. I don't think you guys can stack, correct?
We cannot stack, no.
Okay. And what is stacking?
Okay, so the idea of stacking is you have baseball money in one hand, and then you have academic money or financial aid in the other hand. So the idea of stacking becomes, can you take some out of this hand? Can you take athletic money and academic money, put them together to create a package for you to come to said school? Some schools do it, some schools do not. We do not. So you're either getting a pile of money from one or a pile of money from the other, and you cannot combine those in any way unless it is outside money. Something like a Pell Grant or from the national government you can do, but Wofford works out of two different piles for the most part.
I'm curious on this one as well. Like, who do you guys go up against when it comes to recruiting? What schools you typically go up against? And then how much does it matter who else is recruiting the player? I mean, does it enter your mind, and how much of a factor is it for you?
So I would say I don't know if there's a specific school. We run a lot against the Ivy Leagues. We run a lot against the Patriot Leagues. You're thinking a lot of the Southern academic school, us, Furman, Elon, Davidson. You're kind of running into those guys as much just because you're pulling from the same region for most part and the same kind of kid. So we'll run into them a decent amount. I, personally, if it is a bigger name school, most of the time you're sitting there saying, okay, like what's the odds of us landing this kid? Because if they really want him and we really want him, what is the kid going to probably lean towards? Because we're realistic in that sense as well. But I would say most of the time that you're thinking of that high mid-major level, and it just comes down to the relationship you have with him and how good of a fit he thinks he can be, and you can and show him to your school.
Do you think parents and players are guilty of what we call name brand nonsense? Do you think they're guilty of really just hearing the school name and kind of basing their thoughts on that versus actually looking at deeper at the school?
100%. And I could sit there and say there's a lot of parents that and people involved in it that do us the same thing that we would do. Like we'd sit there and say, well, he's going to that Power 5 school. Like, are they really showing them that much, or are they just hearing what they want to hear in the whole process? And I think it can work the same way to us on the lower scale. Like we'll go against Division III, a really good academic Division III schools a lot, and parents just hear Division I, good academics, and they don't really sit there and say, is this the right fit? Most of the time, of course, if they end up here, we think it's the right fit for them. But it can work many different ways, and it's just kind of a different a scale all the way down. That you got your big schools, and then we're probably doing the same thing. We start yelling at the big schools because they're taking really good players that we really like, and Division IIIs, Division IIs, and lower level Division I's are probably saying the same thing about us, and it's just kind of a pecking order all the way down. But my big thing is just make sure you get all your research, find out, ask tough questions, really ask tough questions about the school. Don't just ask the run of the mill ones that we've heard 1,000 times in the recruiting process. Ask questions that are going to challenge us and make us answer, and just not go down, give us one right on the tee or right down Broadway, that you were making us answer it in a more realistic and a more in-depth level.
Good. 2 more questions here. We'll wrap up. On a visit, when you're taking the parents and players around, what are you hoping to accomplish during that visit? I mean, I like the fact you said you want them to be prepared and ask good questions, but what besides them asking questions, what are you looking for, or what are you looking to show them as well?
I'll start with what are we trying to show them? We are just trying to show them everything that we have, good, bad, indifferent. The line we always use is, we think Wofford's a really good product, but we want you to come in. We want to lift up the hood of the car, and we want you to see how everything operates and everything works. So when you make the decision to come to Wofford, there's no, whoa, I didn't hear anything about this. I didn't know how you guys hit. I didn't know how you guys strengthen conditioning. I don't really like that at all. We want you to understand everything that we are doing. So when you get in here, it's not, oh man, they pulled one over us on this one, and I didn't really understand that's what they did. We want to show you everything that we possibly that we can show you, good, bad, and different, like I was saying before. As for the parents and the interaction with a kid is a huge, huge thing on the visit. How do they interact with their parents? Are they nice to their parents? We give like a little schedule of what our season looks like, and a little information packet when they walk on campus. And I always find it funny when you hand that to the kid and the first thing they do is hand it to the mother or father. You're like, okay, is that a sign? Is that a sign that he is not that independent yet and he doesn't understand what's going on? And we've had some really good players hand it to their mom and not hand it to their mom. But it's just one of those things of, okay, like you're kind of getting a little vision of how that household is. As soon as you hand him a packet and he goes, here you go, and hands it 10 seconds after that, you're like, okay, his mom's going to hold it for the whole time, even though it is his packet. So you're just looking for that interaction. How I can't say that enough. The people who come prepared with questions, knowing our school, asking questions about our school, like those visits are a lot easier because you feel like they're invested already into what is going on, rather than, hey, what conference are you guys in? And I was like, okay, like that's a pretty normal Google search kind of thing. But those questions are the people who are done their homework make it a lot easier for you.
Last question. What about Wofford do people not know? Why Wofford? I mean, if you had to describe
Yep.
it to somebody in 30 seconds or a minute, what makes Wofford a special place?
My biggest thing about Wofford is the personal relationship you get from anywhere on campus. We are just bolstered our enrollment to 1,800 students, Mike. So we're not a big school, but it's just the idea of the development and the personal relationship you get from the president on down to the coaching staff on down. Like everybody here knows who you are, knows what you're about, understands the value you put in education being at Wofford. And I think the biggest thing we get slighted for is not enough people know about Wofford. Every time we call a kid outside of the Southeast region, you are running down who you are as a school and your baseball program. And then you're like, hey, go check the internet and see what you can find on Wofford. And then they come, and I feel like the first conversation to somebody who's never heard it's like, okay. And then the second conversation, they come back and they're like, oh, you guys were really good last year. And you're like, yeah, we're pretty good program. And then it comes back and it starts picking up off of that, just because not enough people know about us as a small private school in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
I almost feel like it's that movie Major League where they say, oh, you guys have a team here in Cleveland? Like, oh yeah,
exactly.
Uniforms and everything.
Yeah, that's it. And then they come back and they look it up and they go, oh wow, like we should be really interested with really good academics and really good baseball. Like that's everything that we want as parents, and then you want the baseball side as a kid. Like this is the best.
Right. It must be funny for you to kind of see that play out multiple times when you're
players. Yeah.
Well, JJ, I appreciate your time. Like I said, very informational for our players. Like I said, we're trying to educate them along the way as well too. And I think what you talked about today from the academic side, the cost side, talking about what to do in a visit, it's going to be beneficial for our players and families. So I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed doing it.
Thank you, JJ.
Have a good one.